Hello, my name is Pooja. Welcome to the Sunday special episode of Around the World. We come up with this program every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. In this special program, we talk about the news which enhances your understanding of global politics. We will discuss one such news in today's story. We all know that the demand for reforms in the United Nations Security Council is made from time to time. We also know that India has submitted its claim many times to become a permanent member of the UNSC. However, so far no progress has been made in this direction. Not only India, but many other countries of the world have been also making demands from time to time to confirm their membership in the UNSC. These countries, including India, argue that UNSC has followed the same pattern since its inception and has now lost relevance. Therefore, reforms are needed in the UNSC to make it relevant. Today, we are discussing this issue with you as discussions of reforms in the UNSC have intensified again. More recently, when the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly was held, leaders from around the world gathered on this occasion. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar attended this meeting on behalf of India. On this occasion, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met the leaders of the G4 countries. In this meeting, these countries reiterated their demand for carrying out reforms in the UNSC. The G4 countries have appealed for decisive action on the pending reforms in the UNSC. The appeal of the G4 countries about the reforms of the UNSC was in the headlines. In addition, it has also been reported in the media that the US President Joe Biden has also advocated for reforms in the UNSC. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly, he appealed to make this organization more inclusive so that it can become more relevant in the present times. In today's story, we will try to understand the politics of reforms in the UNSC. Why reforms have not been carried out in the UNSC till now? We will also try to understand why India is entitled to become a permanent member of the UNSC. What is the debate about ending the veto power? First of all, let us know about the G4 group. 4 countries, Japan, Germany, India and Brazil, formed a bloc in 2005 called the G4 to push for reforms in the UNSC. These countries support each other on the issue of getting permanent memberships in the UNSC. The G4 countries have consistently expressed their commitment to multilateralism. These countries believe that the current structure of the UNSC is not rational for the contemporary needs of the 21st century. They believe that if the acceptability of the United Nations is to be enhanced, then it is very important to make timely reforms in the UNSC. The G4 countries traditionally meet during the annual high-level session of the United Nations General Assembly. Therefore, this year also, on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly session, these countries met and reiterated demand for the reforms in the UNSC. Before we get into the reforms in the UNSC and its relevance, you should know about its establishment and its goals. With the establishment of the United Nations, the UNSC was also established in 1945. If we look broadly, then there are 6 main bodies of the United Nations: General Assembly, Security Council, Economic and Social Council, Secretariat, Trust Council and International Court of Justice. The UNSC is the most powerful of the United Nations. There are a total of 15 members in the UNSC. There are 5 permanent and 10 non-permanent members of the UNSC. The non-permanent members are elected on a regional basis for 2 years. The 5 permanent members of the UNSC are the US, China, France, Russia and the UK. These are called P5s. The United Nations has its separate constitution called the United Nations Charter. According to the UN Charter, the primary responsibility for international peace and security rests with the UNSC. It means that wherever there is an issue of peace and security around the world, the UNSC is bound to play a pivotal role in resolving this issue. However, the UNSC has failed to achieve its goals due to some structural problems. Basically, the permanent members of the UNSC have veto power. Veto power is the strength as well as the weakness of the UNSC. For instance, if the Security Council wants to pass a resolution on any issue, then it cannot be passed with the consent of just 2 or 3 members. The consent of all the permanent members is required to pass it. It means that if any member raises an objection to the resolution and uses its veto power, then that resolution gets rejected by the United Nations Security Council. The irony is that if such a case is presented before the UNSC, which has been entrusted with the responsibility of establishing peace and security in the world, then its members vote against the same by using the veto. Russia has used the veto power a maximum number of times so far, and the US is second to Russia in using the veto power. Actually, the 5 permanent members of the UNSC are considered to be the superpowers of the world. Hence, whenever an issue of international peace and security arises in the world, then the UNSC or the superpowers interfere in it. It implies that in matters where the superpowers of the world are involved, the role of the UNSC, or rather the United Nations, gets reduced even more. For instance, take the case of Afghanistan. When the Taliban captured power in Afghanistan, then the most powerful countries in the world were very active at that time. The US and Britain were speaking out against the Taliban, while Russia and China, rivals of the US, were taking a soft stance on the Taliban, because the relations between Russia and China with the US are not cordial. In such a situation, even if the US, Britain or France had introduced a resolution in the UNSC against the Taliban, then Russia and China would have vetoed it and the matter would have ended there. It means that even the Security Council wanted to take any action on the Afghan issue, then it could not do anything. It is also well known that the UNSC had almost become inefficient when the ideological war between the Soviet Union and the US was going on in the 50s. Therefore, the United Nations need institutional reforms, especially in the Security Council, to get it out of the maze of these superpowers. It is quite surprising that even in 2022, there are the same 5 permanent members in the UNSC as in 1945. However, the superpowers of the world do not bother about the changes that have taken place in global politics. The role of the other countries in international politics has expanded, and various new countries have emerged strongly. In the matter of power also, changes can be seen clearly. Therefore, it is necessary to implement the reforms of the UNSC for the balance of power. However, reforms in the UNSC are still proving to be a far cry. As far as India is concerned, it is not asking to become a member of the UNSC without any solid claims. After 1945 and World War II, the global scenario changed completely. India was a founding member of the United Nations, and it has now become the 5th largest economy in the world by surpassing Britain. India has also shown the world the path of peace by laying the foundation of the non-aligned movement. On the other hand, even after 76 years of formation of the UNSC, the other countries of the world have not been given a proper representation in this body, and hence, the structure of the UNSC becomes questionable. Furthermore, India is the largest democratic country as well as the most developing economy in the world. Whether it is the Russia-Ukraine war or peace in Afghanistan, India has always given proof of being a responsible country. Therefore, India is entitled to be a permanent member of the UNSC. India can do a better job on very serious issues if it gets a place in the UNSC with veto power. Another question that arises is, what does it mean to get a place with veto power? Actually, there has been confusion about the reforms in the UNSC that US President Joe Biden has talked about. In this statement, he mentioned the term permanent seat, not permanent membership. And there is a big difference between the two terms. It means that a country may get a permanent seat in the UNSC, but it would not be given veto power. Notably, the concept of permanent seat is often used for African countries, which are rotational seats. It means that a category or a region will be given a permanent seat, and that seat will be rotated between the countries of that region. It is the same system as being followed for a temporary seat right now. Therefore, Biden's statement has created confusion among all the countries. All these discussions are taking place because whenever there is a talk of reform in the UNSC, abolishing or limiting the veto power or giving the veto power to other countries of the UNSC is also discussed. There is also an idea that all permanent members should give up veto power for 8 to 10 years, that there is no hindrance in the issue of peace and security. The second idea is to maintain veto power but not give it to new countries. But the purpose of the United Nations is equality, and if there will be no equality among all countries, then what is the need of the UNSC? However, it is also needed to be seen that if the veto powers of all the countries is abolished, then will the UNSC become powerless? Apart from all these discussions, it also has to be seen whether carrying out reforms in the UNSC is an easy task or a daunting task. It seems that it will be a daunting task, as under Articles 108 and 109 of the United Nations Charter, the 5 permanent members have the power to veto any amendment to the Charter. It implies that if any amendment is to be made in the veto power, then the consent of all countries will be also required to approve the same. Hence, it will be interesting to see how quickly the Security Council reforms can be carried out, or whether these discussions prove to be just discussions. Now we can come to the next segment of the Sunday special episode of Around the World. In this segment, we will talk about other significant international news. According to Saudi Arabia's official news agency, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been appointed Prime Minister after a cabinet reshuffle. He has been appointed by King Salman of Saudi Arabia. Before Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the post of Prime Minister was held by King Salman, while Prince Mohammed bin Salman was the Defence Minister in his cabinet. Prince Salman is already acting as the country's de facto ruler, but his appointment as Prime Minister has formalized his role as the head of the Saudi Arabia government. The Venezuela-Colombia border has been reopened for trade purposes after a reduction in tensions. Due to tensions between both the countries, this border was closed for the last several years. After the reopening of the border, the economy of both the countries is expected to get a boost. Since Colombia's new leftist president Gustavo Petro has assumed office, relations between the two countries have started getting back on track. The reopening of the border is being considered as an instance of the improving relationship between the two countries. Petro and his Venezuelan counterpart, President Nicolas Maduro, announced a few weeks ago that they also plan to restore diplomatic ties that had ended in 2019. Recently, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and the US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met in the US capital, Washington, D.C. In this meeting, they discussed issues related to the US-India strategic partnership, the Ukraine-Russia war, and a free and open Indo-Pacific. In addition, the strategic ties were reviewed and views were shared on regional and global priorities during the meeting. In addition, S. Jaishankar also participated in conferences and events organized by the US-India Business Council and the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. The dispute between Turkey and Greece intensified again over the island present in the agency. Actually, Turkey alleges that Greece has deployed the United States armored vehicles on 2 islands in the agency off the coast of Turkey. Turkey has summoned the ambassador of Greece on this matter and has lodged a protest against the US. Both Greece and Turkey are a part of the US-led NATO military alliance. Both the countries have been at war for years over maritime boundaries in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean seas and the rights to oil and gas in the region. Now let's look at the question. What are the reasons for the demand to carry out reforms in the United Nations Security Council? Discuss the reason for the delay in carrying out these reforms. Did you like our program? Do give your suggestions regarding this program. Please share your response in the comments section. We will be waiting for your response.